This is footage from the video game Star Wars Battlefront. We're in a level on the forest planet Endor. It's a planet that's typical for the Star Wars universe insofar that basically each planet has its own recognizable climate theme. The climate of the planets doesn't variate along the latitude or is terrain dependent in any way. For example, the planet Tatooine is completely a desert, Hoth is all ice, and Endor, where we are now, consists of a primeval forest that sprawls over the entire planet. Desert, ice, jungle, all of these landscapes seem to be picked to appear exotic and exciting to the movie's Western urban target audience. The selection does feel a bit like a best of nature on Earth that you would show to aliens visiting the planet for the first time. So, the forest on Endor couldn't just be any forest, but one that's spectacular with its gigantic, almost comically exaggerated trees. It is a bit funny that the planets that you're supposed to find at the other end of the universe look, for me at least, just like places at the other end of the world. The movie is using the classical romantic trope of the untouched, wild, and inhospitable landscape that is so entrenched into our understanding of landscapes and catapults the theme onto planets that are supposed to make us feel far away in time and space and make us believe that this is a parallel universe that we're looking at. One of my most vivid childhood memories was the incongruity of the chilling cold that I felt watching the iced planet Hoth on the TV screen, and the warmth of the blanket I was wrapped up in sitting on my parents' sofa 20 years ago. I was so immersed into the movie, my mind following the story to other planets deep into space. But my body was still there on the sofa in my parents' house, in a village in the Bavarian countryside, that me and my friends would later call the most boring place in the universe. The filmmakers encountered this phenomenon of being split between two places in kind of a reverse form. When they were shooting the first trilogy of the movies, there wasn't really the possibility to do much in CGI, so they still needed a place on Earth as a backdrop for their movie, as opposed to now, where there is an alternative to the real world, in rendering a different world in the computer. The place that they ended up using for the scenes on Endor was conveniently just around the corner of their studios in the Redwood Forest National Park in Northern California. I was always thinking, it's almost like a magic trick. The actors put on their costumes, start to pose, and then the moment the shutter of the camera opens, it's like a speech act. I hereby declare this national park to be a foreign planet in a galaxy far, far away. And in a split second, the fiction is dragged over the material place, like an invisible second skin. Shortly after the movies came out, fans started to try to find the exact places where the filming of each scene took place. There's websites and forums where people are providing maps for each other, try to align landmarks with their cameras so they fit the framing in the movie, search the making of for hints on locations, and discuss which parts are inaccessible for them hidden away on private property. There's these little reports on the websites where they recount their traveling and report what they found out. Here is some of the hints that one of the travelers collected and would then use as a foundation for their search to find the exact spots where the scenes in California were filmed. Rockefeller Forest hosted some small Return of the Jedi scenes. Exit 101 at Matoli Road to reach south entrance to forest. Unknown quote. There was a clear cut to the east and the Pacific Ocean to the west. Unknown quote. Harrison Ford liked to eat at Jim's, a restaurant in Crescent City, from the making of Return of the Jedi. There's a story about the 19th century author Margaret Fuller traveling to see the Niagara Falls. She writes about her first encounter with the falls. When I arrived in sight of them, I merely felt, ah yes, here is the fall, just as I've seen it in picture. I thought only of comparing the effect on my mind with what I had read and heard. I looked for a short time, and then, with almost a feeling of disappointment, turned to go to the other points of view. Happy were the first discoverers of Niagara, those who could come unawares upon this view, and upon that, whose feelings were entirely their own. For her, the pre-existing images of the scenery spoiled the view. The anticipation of it, having seen it in pictures before, did outshine the thing itself. For her, this meant that the possibility to experience the place was completely lost. In the finale of the first Star Wars trilogy, when Darth Vader is about to die, he asks his son Luke Skywalker to take off his helmet and tells him, "Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes." He's talking more about his mind being corrupted by the dark side, but there seems to be something in that wish that resembles Fuller's romanticism. An unobstructed, non-mediated view onto the world, an immediate connection to the world, the longing to belong to the world and not be separated from it. Star Wars fans searching for the movie sets are in a way a step further than the romantics of the 19th century. They don't pray to the original place anymore. They don't travel to these places for the landscape itself, but for what it was in the images of the movies. They know that the important thing is or has always been the image of the place. So why not cut some corners and worship the image itself? They have learned that we like the romantic view exactly because it's a view, because we're not in it, even if it's a view that ostensibly includes us. When they made the video game that we're looking at right now, one of the premises was to be as close to the movies as possible. So, what they did was to send a crew of developers to the locations where the movies were filmed, searching for the same landscapes as the fans 30 years ago. They would then use optical 3D scanning techniques to scan the landscape and create virtual models of the environment that they could then use inside the game. This was also part of the advertising campaign that they ran while promoting the game. Their promise was, everything would look just like in the movies, because these were the actual places. There's even a little clip that they put out, showing the crew hiking through the woods of Endor and trudging through the snow of Hoth on a Norwegian glacier. I like the idea that they were traveling to those sometimes really far off places. But what they were looking for wasn't really the place that they were in, but a place that only really existed in the motion picture of the Star Wars fiction. What was important for them was that the landscape around them had existed in some form in the movies. That form being images on celluloid film which captured the light that was bounced back to the camera by the surfaces of everything in front of the lens. Those 100-year-old trees that they were looking at, they could have walked up to one, extended their hand to touch the bark of the tree, and in a way they would not have cared if the tree really only existed as a bark and was hollow, because they only cared for the surface of their surroundings. But it wasn't the touch of their hand, but the touch of the light on the tree that they were able to capture. Both the cameras the movie was shot with and the cameras they used for the scanning weren't able to penetrate the skin of the trees and the rocks in the riverbed, but only cared for their surfaces. There is an off-screen beyond the rectangle of the frame, but there's also another off-screen that starts 1 millimeter under the skin of everything, even if it's in the frame.